Okay, well, I think we should kick this off right now. First of all, thank you all so much for joining, and I'm so honored to moderate this panel today, and so happy to really be digging into this topic that is so incredibly important. So thank you, panelists. Thank you to the organizers of Amplifying Her Voice and Stronger Together, and for bringing a Father's Day theme to this. And thank you for the viewers who are joining us today as well. So as I said, I'm so excited to be talking about this topic, fathers and unpaid work and why it matters. And it's a topic that I've been deeply attached to long before it became a pandemic headline. Unpaid work, for those of you that don't know, is typically defined as child and sick care, cooking, cleaning, and house maintenance, to name a few things. And of course, then we have the invisible load as well, which is all those back-end things that we have to do with respect to caregiving and life in general. But what we do also know is that this unpaid work swallows up so much of our day for both men and women, mothers and fathers. But today it's also still an overwhelming burden that mothers feel more than anyone else. And it's eating into hours of paid work. And this ultimately impacts the gender pay gap. It impacts advancement at work. It impacts the achieving of gender equality and really well-being for all. So today we're going to talk about this from the context of how fathers' contribution of unpaid work can have a positive impact on not just women, but men and children as well. So before we get started, I'll introduce myself quickly, and then we'll jump into brief introductions of all of you wonderful panelists. So to start, I'm Christy Rival, and I'm obviously going to be moderating this event today. And I'm the founder of the Human Group, where we focus on humanizing the workplace through leadership initiatives, through coaching initiatives, all that aim to develop leaders who are intelligent across gender, culture, generation, and emotion. And I also teach a course at Stanford called Motherhood and Work, Challenges and Opportunities for Change. And that course is open to all in the fall if there's interest there. So now I also want to say that this panel is slated for an hour and 15 minutes. So I am going to try to stay in that hour time frame, but we do have a little buffer as needed, but I'm going to make us try to stay in that hour time frame. Especially because I did note that right when this panel ends in an hour, that you could go to the next session, which is everything your wife wishes she knew about sex. So that might be interesting to many of the viewers. So we'll try to keep this as contained to that hour as best as possible. Okay, so on to our amazing panelists. We have today Leslie Ford, Sergio Rosario Diaz, Patricia Manley, and also Eve Rodsky, who hasn't yet joined, but she is going to jump in as soon as she is able. But we'll get started with the others, and I'm going to have them each introduce themselves as, you know, in the way that best suits who they are, and also to kick us off with a short explanation around why it's important to engage men in this conversation around unpaid work. So I think we'll start with, I'll just go in order of my screen. We'll start with Leslie, we'll go to Sergio, and then we'll go to Patricia. So when Leslie's done, Sergio, you can pick up and Patricia, and then we'll go from there.
Great. Thank you for the lovely introduction and for inviting me. I'm Leslie Ford. I'm the founder of Mom's Hierarchy of Needs. And for the past 5+ years, I've been researching the intersection between stress, self-care, and growth, initially for mothers, but now on the other side of my business where I help employers keep caregivers in the workforce, I'm doing this research more broadly with men and women, and kind of a range of needs in the workplace. So I'm really thrilled to talk about this topic. The issue of the gender divide in the home has come up in my research since the beginning, over 5 years ago. It's a hot topic because it's a difficult problem to solve in the home. and it has a profound impact on how mothers can contribute in the workplace. And frankly, I think this is a critical discussion because we will not have equality for women or mothers in the workplace without equality in the home. So thank you for inviting me.
Hello, all. Thank you, Leslie. Those words were amazing. And I think every time I'm with you at somewhere, I learn so much. You put it into such beautiful terms and words, and I'm a big fan of what you've been doing all this time. My name is Sergio Rosario Diaz. I have two last names because when I was little, my mother said, I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. I educated you. And you better have my last name always with you. So that's kind of honoring my mother at all times. That's why I carry both of my last names. So I am the founder and creator of Soy Super Papa. Soy Super Papa is a platform for that. Let me start the story by saying in 2016, when I knew I was going to become a father, there were no resources for Latino men in the U.S. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I made it to the U.S. when I was in 2013. So you can imagine me being a native Spanish speaker looking for resources. In my case, it's important to raise my daughter with my culture, right? Attached to my own Puerto Rican culture. My wife is also Puerto Rican. I met her in DC. And that was one of the things we decided at the beginning. And we also decided that language was so important. So when the time came to get some more information and try to start getting ideas of how to raise a daughter in the US, a Latina woman, I decided that I needed to start something because there wasn't anything. So I kind of started shaping this community of active fathers. And all of a sudden it took off, right? And we're in 22 countries. We have over 70,000 dads in our group. It's a group with an engagement of 4.3 million users every month or more, depending on the month, on the traffic. But we became a community that we nurture and learn from each other. So the most important thing for me when it comes to gender equality is to find joint solutions and to find solutions that have worked for other societies. Maybe what's working in Chile, what's working in Mexico, what's working in other countries can help us. And we need to look at these parents, at these people, at these men and women who are constantly finding and working their ways around this topic to be able to find these solutions, whether it's at a bigger scale at work or at home. But we need to be able to look at other cultures to do this ourselves.
Thank you, Sergio. Well, my name is Patricia Manley, but I'm also from Latin America. So I have also two surnames, but I decided to take my husband. But it's a good point that you make about the two surnames, because I put my surname in the names of my children because your mom was totally right. Like, I deserve half of that. So thank you so much. Like, it's amazing being sharing this subject with you. In the UK, I'm originally from Venezuela. I work in technology, and I have a long, 20 years career in technology. And I'm always been a very driven career woman, wanted to kind of go into the professional ladder and all that kind of thing. But also I am in an environment which is male dominated. I totally believe in equality, and I totally believe in diversity because I am immigrant, I'm Latina. I don't look the stereotype of a tech person, a lot of people say, and it's a lot of things that you need to break. But one of the things that really bring me to this subject is the fact that at some point during my career, at some point in our life, when my second daughter was born, my husband stayed at home. And it was such a stereotype that absolutely every time that I was talking and they were saying, so what your husband is doing? Like, yeah, he stayed at home. And it was such an uncomfortable few seconds of every single conversation when people didn't know what to say. And I found that kind of a cliche, kind of like stereotype, kind of like sad that during this time of, this century, we're still feeling estranged with these kind of situations. So I'm very much supporting this kind of initiative and very much supporting parents that want to go into that path, and also experience as well what it is to stay at home and have that experience, because I think that is one of the hardest works. So when this subject came about unpaid work, I truly believe that, yes, even though I work 7, 8 hours or 10 hours in an office or whatever, the hard work is at home. And I was super proud to be able to say, yeah, my husband is at home and he has the one that have the hardest work. So has been a lot of stereotypes, and still that stereotypes continue. Like, just to put an example, we are thinking moving to another country here in Europe, and usually people would say is, oh, it's because your husband is changing jobs. And I'm like, no, I'm the one changing job, and he's going with me, and he's going to stay at home for the first period of time, setting up everything, and then he will look for his opportunity, and we are fine with that. And it's still, again, is the same 30 seconds gap of, I don't know what to say, this is awkward conversation, which, I think we need to break. And that's me.
Thank you, Patricia. And so, hi, Eve, as well. Good to see you. Perfect timing. We have just done introductions. Leslie has given hers, Sergio has given hers, and Patricia just finished. And I just asked for a brief introduction of who you are, and also why this topic is so important, involving men in the conversation, why that's so important. And that's where we're kicking off right now. So if you want to join and jump right in, Eve,
absolutely,
to the next, please do.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. As you know, this is also a deeply held passion for me. I 100% believe that for women to step into their full power in the world, we have to invite men to step into their full power in the home. And I came to this work 10 years ago, similar to Leslie, where they call research me search, where I was burned out from being the default parent, or as I call in fair play, the she-fault parent. And I really didn't know. I didn't know that women did 2/3 or more of what it takes to run a home and family. I had been conditioned that having it all means doing it all. And I've been on a 10-year journey to understand that, there's a reckoning going on. There's a lot of reckonings happening, hopefully post-pandemic. But one of them is that every nation, really, not ancient cultures, as Sergio said in the chat, but developed nations, we've been conditioned to believe that we can build our society on the unpaid labor of women, and when paid, the undervalued labor of women of color. And that can't be any longer. That has to change. And to do that, we need men to do housework and childcare. So that's why I'm here, because I've made it my mission to speak about this to the day I die, because I believe that that's the code. The code is to make housework and childcare genderless and part of adulting and what it means to be human. And so I'm really excited to be here for this conversation.
So much, Eve. I think we are all on this panel feeling it for sure. And I'm so excited to hear what everyone has to continue to add today. So thank you so much, Eve. So I'm going to kick this off with Sergio, because he is the father on this panel. And this summit is really, it's broad topics, but we do, bring men into the conversation in this. So I wanted to start off with you, and I wanted to first hear, there's so much that has been written over this past year about how the pandemic has this potential to cause a sea change, right, in gender roles at home. And when men and women both began working from home, and as childcare and house chores became front and center and really visible to families, people started thinking, wow, this is the point in which things might change. And so I wanted to get your opinion on this. Do you think the pandemic has done that, has helped cause this sea change or potential for sea change in gender roles at home? And how do you see the future moving forward, and really shifting the paradigm, and how shifting the paradigm for fathers could be beneficial for everyone?
That's a great question. I think the pandemic has given visibility to the primary caretaker and everything that's usually done behind the scenes, right? You don't see what's going on every day for 8, 10, 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours if the other parent is not engaged, is not involved at home. So I think the pandemic has helped people realize that it takes a team effort to be successful, period. I think one of the things that happens in my case around the house, I am also I'm very glad to hear your story and your husband's story. I admire you and admire him, and also what Patricia is doing here is very important. Whether it's a man or a woman that's staying in the home, we need to make them visible. We need to make them part of our success, of our stories, our everyday stories. It's not that you're on the front and my spouse sits at home and he's invisible and we don't talk about it. It's about making things equal and letting people know what the hard work is, which is the unpaid work that goes on at home. Another thing I wanted to add is that just in my case, for example, recently I was working with Eve on a series of interviews, and my wife said something like, she said that the house chores are, it's a contract. She's an attorney, of course. You all have to know that she's an attorney. And when we first dictated our clauses and what I was going to do when I was a stay-at-home parent was not 100% what I was doing, right? I think I faced certain challenges. I didn't know staying at home was so difficult, and it was, mentally exhausting. It was just hard work, hard labor. And she said something like, yeah, you weren't doing your contract. Like your contract wasn't 100%, fulfilled. But we said, yes, we needed to have that talk and say, hey, it's difficult. So one of the first steps that you want to take when you having a person staying at home, whether it's your significant other, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a grandma, we all know there's a lot of grandparents who are helping around the house. We need to make them visible, and we need to revisit these contracts every month. 12 conversations to have in a year, it's not enough. We can have more than these every week. It's just, we have a conversation almost every day when she gets home. How was your day? How hard it was? How was our daughter's behavior? How was her school? How was, all the different things? How was your job now that I'm staying home and working, which is even harder? So the pandemic has, I think, made people realize that it has to be a joint effort, or there can't be a contract at all. Like you cannot fill out or sign a contract that does not benefit you at all. And we all know that since we have been getting education. What an attorney first tells you is don't sign the contract without reading it. Nobody wants to put that pen in your hands when you're not ready to read it. So you first have to deal with that and have to, I would say something like, take it for a test run and see what things you can fulfill 100% and what things you need support. In my case, the support was I need support doing laundry. I couldn't fulfill that part of the contract. It was too much. It was, military uniforms. It was, 6 months old clothes, my stuff. It was just like, I couldn't. And that was part of the original contract. So we each made it work. So what do we do now? My wife is not taking the whole load of doing the laundry. She's doing her own laundry. And if she needs me to take care of something, immediately we have a laundry room, and she leaves it in front of the door in the laundry basket. And I know it's my turn to step up. So all these cues, all these hints, all these conversations need to happen, because we don't only want visibility. We don't only want the primary taker to be visible. We want the primary taker to take what's theirs and to actually feel like they have value. And it's not only about providing value to fulfill their dreams and their professional goals. So, parenting has many stages. Why don't we work a different contract to the different stages of parenting.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sergio. Everything that you said resonates, and I think you all are blazing a path for so many couples to emulate and follow. So the next, I'm going to address individual questions to each of the panelists, and then we're going to go to move into kind of a free-for-all where we can have more of a dialogue and conversation. But I want to make sure I've given everyone their floor time, and then we can kind of jump into just a fun dialogue around various topics. So this next question I'm going to actually address to Leslie. And Leslie, I know you in your intro, and obviously you do a lot of work around self-care for working mothers and a lot of research to back up why you do what you do. And also that topic of self-care has also been really front and center during this pandemic. So I wanted to hear a little bit more from you around how does unpaid work impact our overall health? And in particular, why should fathers care about this? And or how can fathers support mothers and vice versa? And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think Sergio stated it very well, as did Eve and Patricia. The work in the home, which includes a combination of very physical work and very cerebral work, most of it's never done. And when you realize that to plan for your child to get anywhere on time, be it to school, be it to an activity, you need to do about 15 things before that activity. You're constantly engaged in kind of the operational side of managing a home, managing kids. And it's ongoing. And it can feel relentless. I've tried to describe it. I tried to describe it to my husband once, almost like, it's like being a conductor in a really busy train station, like Penn Station, right? Like if you don't move your trains at the exact right time, another train is going to run into the train, right? If those dishes aren't out of the sink, then you cannot get prepared for the next meal. If the counters aren't cleared, then making breakfast is going to take you twice as long. Like everything requires a lot of logistical planning. And that type of, ongoing work is consuming. And it doesn't allow a lot of space for people who are primarily caring for the home, primarily caring for the kids, to care for their own mental, physical, or emotional health. So if you are responsible for all the unpaid work, or you're primarily responsible for all the unpaid work, or some combination of the unpaid work and the work, the paid work, that doesn't leave you space for caring for your well-being. And I think what happens, especially in our society, we start to try to distance ourselves from our biology, right? It happens in the workplace. People do not want to acknowledge that people need breaks. How many times have you been in meetings or on a schedule where there were no breaks to even go to the bathroom or to eat lunch or to have like any space to think a thought in between? So bringing that humanity back into how we think about running the home, how we think about running our professional lives is really critical. So anyone who is supporting the unpaid work needs space to care for themselves. And in my studies, 9 times out of 10, when someone describes what they need for their emotional health, physical health, mental health, 9 times out of 10, they want to do something alone. So if you are the primary caregiver, you need your partner, you need another caregiver to step in and support you and relieve you so that you can care for yourself, recharge, and reset to keep going.
The time alone, I think every parent I should say, of course, parents are parents of children, but anyone with children can relate to that too. Time alone to recharge, take a deep breath. So absolutely. My next question is actually going to Eve. And sorry, Patricia, not intending to put you last, but the order works a little bit better with our flow. So Eve, here's my question for you. We know that traditional and historical gender norms play a really huge, enormous role in how unpaid work has been historically divided within our homes. And traditional gender norms often reinforce the idea that men are the breadwinners and women are the homemakers and caretakers, despite the fact that we know that women are increasingly breadwinners today. So how do these traditional gender norms show up in households? How is that changing today? And ultimately, what needs to happen to get to a place where both mothers and fathers feel that the burden of unpaid work is being shared? And I know this question, you wrote books about this. So, I mean, this can go on, but if you can just give your take on that, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because, of course, there's role reversals. But even when I talk to LGBTQIA couples, often one person will say, well, I'm the woman in the relationship, right? So these heteronormative boxes are very strong. And so obviously the goal is to celebrate all family structures, but to recognize the limits of living in this very heteronormative culture. And part of that limit is why I chose to write to women, because my mother, she's a professor of social change. And she said, well, why are you writing to the oppressed, right? You want to be writing to the oppressor. And but I thought a lot about writing to women because in my now 10 years of research, there was a lot of what I call CIYOO, being complicit in your own oppression. And that's in how we as a society view and value women's time. So the underlying point I have in Fair Play before I get to how the system could work for any family structure is to understand that typically we view and value women's time in our society as infinite, like sand, and we guard men's time as if it's finite, like diamonds. And that comes up in many scenarios. We know that if women enter a male profession, salaries automatically go down. We see it in these random public service announcements that say things like breastfeeding is free. Definitely not free if you valued my time. That was like 9 hours a day. But really the most insidious is when I heard women speak to themselves. And they did that in 4 ways. They would say things to me like, I'm the one picking up the phone call from the school and my kid is sick because my husband makes more money than me, or my job is more flexible. Well, research shows that if a woman is a doctor, a man is a lawyer, the woman says her job is more flexible. You switch it, the woman's the lawyer, the man's the doctor, she says her job is, ta-da, more flexible. You also hear it in women saying they're better multitaskers when there's no gender difference in how we multitask. We're not wired differently for care at all. We hear it when women say, in the time it takes me to tell him, her, they what to do, I should just do it myself. That devalues all women's future time. We hear it when women say, yes, we're both colorectal surgeons, but my husband's better at focusing on one thing at a time and I can find the time. So what I like to say is, unless we're Albert Einstein and we know how to fuck with the space-time continuum, which we can't, there's actually no way to find time. There's just a different expectation over how women are supposed to use their time. What gets into what Leslie was saying, that there's actually no permission to be unavailable as a woman. If you're not a parent, a partner, or a professional in a role, it's very subversive still to spend your free time, your leisure time on uninterrupted attention for things that you love as a woman. And so I think about that a lot because the more we normalize this work and ungender it, right, the more we get women to where Leslie wants them to be, which is in a flow state, in places where we can listen to ourselves, to listen to our clues, to find out what makes us happy, to not be having to follow extrinsic societal expectations. And so, yes, we could talk about this forever, but I will say that I will leave my part by saying that time is 24 hours, and we have to start looking at it that way. It can't be looked at as a gender difference in how we value women and men's time in our society.
Thank you so much, Eve. Time. It is so much is about time. And I've loved that quote from the beginning that you've written and used so often, that women's time is like sand and men's time is like diamonds, and I might be butchering that a little bit, so go read the book. But so thank you. Okay, Patricia, last but not least, in my direct question, I wanted to also talk to you a little bit about obviously your views on unpaid work. And I know that you also do a lot of work around the importance of self-care for women. And I also know that you've spent a couple decades in the tech world in global companies in Germany, in the UK, and in Venezuela. So I'm curious on your perspective there on how do you feel we can involve organizations in better understanding the impact that unpaid work has on employees for both men and women, and what your view on that may be.
I think that is a great question after what Eve say, because I think the changes need to start with us as well. And one of the things that happen at work is exactly what Eve say. Why my work or my job is more flexible than my husband, if we're having similar careers or whatever. And I think need to start with the employee first to make that difference. And then, organizations kind of start changing. So the same thing happened with men, like why they don't see themselves taking care of the kids, or why they don't see themselves doing certain things that moms usually do. And I think from the other side, as you say, is about us as a woman not allowing men to do the things in the way that they need to do it. So, I was a stay-at-home mom during my maternity leave from my first son, and it was a reverse case. So my husband was working, he was coming back home, and sometimes he was asking me, like, what do you do the whole day if the house is a mess or something? And I just wanted to kill him, right? But then when the opposite happened, and then I was the one that went away, and then he spent about 3 or 4 years taking care of my kids. At the beginning was really hard for me because he wasn't doing the things in my way. But who is telling us that the mom's way is the right way? So I have to get to a point when I have to accept that the laundry wasn't going to happen exactly in the way, or the socks wasn't going to be fall in the same way. The kids were happy, the kids were fed, they were smiling when I was arriving at home. Like, it doesn't matter the way that he was doing it. He was happening. It was his way, not my way. So I appreciate, and this is how I start appreciating what he was doing at home. So I will say the first thing is, as individuals, we need to change those stereotypes of those boxes that Eve was mentioning, to then go into our places of work and say, I need to leave early today because I need an appointment with, to do X, Y, and Z, rather than my wife is going to take care of that. I really don't care. And then establish those rules within, your job as well, and make organizations realize that happened. The good thing about what happened, at least in Europe, is things are changing slightly. So, in UK, the laws change slightly, and now we have more parental leave from the parents. But that went from like 1 week to 2 weeks, which is ridiculous, right? When women, we are allowed to even be away from work for a whole year, which is fabulous. It's amazing. But then there are other countries in Europe when they allow you to have 6 months and 6 months. So it's a truly pure experience of parents interchanging the roles and really having the experience with their kids as well. So there are definitely organizations that are doing it, and just by pure chance, I just saw one of my connections in LinkedIn that she was very grateful because the company that the husband works here in the UK allowed him to be with the kids for 6 months, and that is really unheard yet, right? Totally unheard. But there are companies that are doing the bits when allowing this parental, maybe not in 6 months block, but they're allowing a little bit more space for men to also participate on that. And I also can see a change in a lot of parents taking more responsibilities into what they're doing with the kids, and kind of like co-parenting, and taking responsibilities of, you do this part and I do this part. In many cases around people that I know, but it's still a lot of work to do. But I truly believe to start with us, and we are the ones telling organizations is we need to make that change. We need to see that change. And also, especially women, we should be leading those kind of changes and changing the stereotypes that we have. Unfortunately, we're having our heads without even realizing, as Eve was saying, without even realizing we have those statements when we know it's not true. It's possible for men as well if they go into their organizations and they explain what happened or what is the agreement or what is the organization in the house. There's a lot of companies that are also flexible if you ask for.
Absolutely, Patricia. Thank you. Over and over, we keep hearing how gender equality in organizations, gender balance in organizations, gender equality as a whole starts in the home. And I feel like until the last couple years here, thanks to you all who are actually building these messages up in society, that it wasn't talked about as much, but it really does. It begins in the home, and you all are exemplifying that in these messages and in your actions and all of that. So this next question, I'm going to pose to everyone. So feel free to kind of jump in as you wish. But, you know, we're talking about this unpaid care work and the importance of it, and why there's historically been more of a burden on mothers than on fathers, and why fathers, why it matters to fathers too. But there's also this perception that unpaid work is not valuable, right? It's not considered part of economic output in all countries in the world. Yet we know that without caring for others, humanity doesn't exist, right? And we have people like Dr. Rian Eisler, who actually spoke at this conference earlier today, who since the 1980s has been proposing a whole new approach to economics, which gives visibility and value to caring for people and the planet. And then we have economists like Nancy Fulbray, whose research validates that economics should recognize that unpaid care work provides economically valuable services that do contribute to living standards, gross domestic product, etc. So how do we get to a place of valuing unpaid work and involving fathers equally into caregiving and unpaid work? And what needs to happen to get to this place of where unpaid work is truly valued? It's a big one. Does anyone want to jump in and their thoughts on that one? I have a lot in there.
There's a lot in there. I'll take a first pass at it. It's a big question. I think it's complicated because so much of the care work, right, that happens within families has traditionally been unpaid. And then if you look at early childhood education, how teachers are paid, how caregivers who work, whether they work domestically or in a setting like a daycare or a senior care facility, they're severely underpaid, right? So in our society, it really extends deeply that this work is not treated as valuable. I'm optimistic about some of the policy changes that are kind of being discussed and are in play, at least here in the United States, where if paid leave becomes kind of prevalent and nationally available, then it starts to put a price tag on people's time, at least whether it's caring for someone who's ill, caring for a child that's born, or, you know, any of that care starts to have a price tag attached. And to Eve's point earlier, right, what's visible, what's measured is visible, and what's visible kind of becomes factored into how society works and how we make decisions. So I think that's a piece of it. I think also in the workplace, employers had already started to kind of dip a toe in the water of being stakeholders in care, right? Even this predates the pandemic. I used to work in the care industry. So many employers have, usually large ones, but a large number of large employers allow people to have backup care days that are heavily subsidized by the company, or they will pay for childcare under certain circumstances. And in the pandemic, it really broke the concept of backup care, right? Like for people who suddenly didn't have access to on-site school or didn't have access to their typical care setup, companies had to step in, and in many cases stepped in to cover that gap because they're direct recipients, right? They're beneficiaries of care infrastructure. So I think as more organizations step in to and assume that responsibility, they will also value it with a price tag. It'll be part of the P&L, and it'll be a clean part of the P&L instead of a hidden part of the P&L in the form of absenteeism, presenteeism, and high mental health care costs. So I think those changes will start to make a change, but it's not going to be a fast change, unfortunately.
So true.
I wanted to say that when the education starts, early education starts, we tend to see these norms of how little girls are supposed to be the nurturing mother and play, and when you think about a child's education like timeline, we never talk to boys about being caretakers and nurturers and doing chores at home. And it's not until then it goes to another stage of like during college, and then we have mom or we have somebody that goes and brings them food, and so we are not like raising independent, right, in the aspect of giving them the responsibilities they deserve. Then they get out of college, and I hear this a lot. Moms say, well, my son just got out of college, like he's a baby. Well, he's an adult. He's responsible. And there's a lot of things we need to teach our boys. But then it doesn't, you don't get to the fatherhood or the caretaking conversation maybe until a male is around 30 or 27 and up. And then that's a little bit too late because you're looking, or you have a significant other, you're getting married, or you have a kid coming your way, and now it's too late to start the conversation. And it again falls on the female, on the girls who have been getting that education, saying you have to be the nurturing type, and you have to care for others, you have to care for your siblings. We are constantly putting these responsibilities on women. I was raised by in a family of all female by a single mother, and our house didn't have any gender assigned chores. So I remember when I was at school, I used to get, they used to make fun of me because I mopped, I did the laundry. I learned how to cook when I was 12. My mother was sick, and I remember she was pregnant with my little sister. She had to be in bed, and she bought me a walkie-talkie, and she showed me, like, she would just give me the instructions while I was in the kitchen, so I would learn. You just fast forward this into, I'm in college now, and I have all these skills that make me a independent human being. But my case is very unique. You usually don't see this. I still, to this day, around the fatherhood community, don't see this. I do see nurturing and caring fathers and active fathers, but I don't see fathers who are taking care of 50% of the house chores. So it's a different type of education that needs to go on in order for us to get real gender equality.
So much is tied into these gender norms of what is masculine and what is feminine, and is caretaking masculine? If you're a man and you feel that you need to be masculine, is caretaking? And I think that those conversations too around what is masculinity, what is femininity, also play into this. Anyone else have anything?
I'll just jump in and say that my dream to work with Sergio and Leslie, and now Patricia, and Christy, you too, of course, is I really want to reimagine home economics and call it home equity instead. Economics is important too, but home ec can also be home equity. And I think that So I'm putting you all on the spot that I'm going to come to you when I have funding to do this. But I want to use all the TikTok stars and all of the YouTubers like Mr. Beast and basically show that adulting is not gendered, because that's really what fair play is about. Fair play is about the ownership mindset, which is sort of a joke that I have to, we have to still educate men on the ownership mindset when that's just executive function. It's actually what makes you a good worker or a good human being. Sergio learned it early, but as you said, Sergio, so few people learn that. But I think the idea that completing a task from start to finish is a valuable, very valuable lesson for boys to learn. Maybe we'll take the gender out of it. I sometimes think if you do talk about it in terms of brain development, it's easier than if you talk about it in terms of care, since we don't value care at all. So yes, I will definitely be tapping you for that. Reimagining home economics for the next generation of boys.
Count me in.
I love it. I have girls, but I've had so much focus on girls for the fact that I have daughters. But boy, I'm kind of shifting to realize how incredibly important it is. The next generation of boys too, so important. And if anyone's going to do this, Eve, based on your track record too, this last year and a half, I've got my money on you. So,
I definitely will help as well, because I have a boy and a girl, and it's always a constant battle because they are equal. So it's always a constant battle of my daughter say, I'm equal, like I want the same thing or the same treatment, and the other way around. So there's never exceptions like, well, he's a girl. No, it's like, I want the same thing. So it's quite interesting, the dynamic with a 10 and a 7, but both want to be the same thing. So yeah, happy to help as well.
Love it. So anything else around that question?
Something that came to mind, it was just a conversation I had maybe a couple of months ago about the workplace side of this and the role I think that men can play there. I've seen it done really well. There was an organization I worked in where there were some very hands-on fathers who said, hey, guess what? I'm not going to be available because I am, going to be caring for my kids on this day, or I'm the soccer coach and we are going to be unavailable this afternoon. And they're very vocal about time spent away from work as being care time, child time. And I think those types of, it seems subtle, but it's not subtle. I think that begins to shift the workplace. And that begins to shift the conversations in the home. There was another dad that I spoke with, this again was more like a couple of months ago, large manufacturing company, middle of the country. And he was really frustrated. This was a white man, might I add, who during the pandemic, their daycare was closed. He had wanted to work from home for a number of months to help with childcare. He has 2 young children. And he was denied. And that's been sitting with me for a while. Like, if he were a woman, would have that have been approved? I don't know. He was in a manufacturing facility where this was when anyone who did not have a direct hands-on role was working from home. He did not have a manufacturing role, yet he was required to be there. So I think about it in both ways. Like, how can fathers assert themselves more as caregivers, and how can employers start to degender the responsibility in the way that we are beginning to do so? I also have a boy and a girl, and I've been very intentional about there are no gender assigned chores in the home, because I think that sensibility is really critical, and it's going to have to come from both sides.
Yeah, I just want to add something about that. And I think the pandemic, and I think that was one of the questions at the beginning, but I think the pandemic brought a lot of sense to men when they are now at home or for a long period of time working from home, and then seeing what actually happened at home, right? And actually having the interactions, the relentlessness, all the things that happen. And I think from that point, they were more appreciated about the job that the person who is at home was doing, because at some point that sharing of the responsibilities has to happen, because otherwise the kids will be opening the door or something like that. So I think one of the positive sides, there are many positive sides, but positive side of all this pandemic is kind of bringing more consciousness to workers in general, like, men, women, or whoever that has been forced to be at home, and see what actually happened. So it's not like arriving at home, it's like what you did is everything is, a mess. It's actually the person now understand what has been a mess and actually help with the mess to put things together. And I have several examples when in my previous job, I was manager of quite a big team, and one of my employees we need to have an agreement, Leslie, what you were saying, because it was unmanageable, their childcare, and they have a decision to take, and then they decide that the wife was the one who was going to continue working from home, and then he took part-time. So for a period of time, we established that for, I think it was 6 months or so, doing a part-time job, or not part-time job, working 3 days a week. So 2 days he had the flexibility to do that. So we accommodate everything, even the type of job that he was doing. He's a developer. The type of job he was doing, we kind of compress of what he can achieve during the time that he's here. So we are not depending on him, and he doesn't have the pressure that I haven't finished my job. So we minimize the amount of things that he was doing, or giving pieces of work that he was able to kind of like finish or almost finish by the time that he was taking his time off. And it works really well. And then after, I think 6 months or so, everything came back. And then he came back with a conversation of, can I come back? Now we can have a childcare, etc. And it works really well. So it is possible. But we need to ask as well. We need to ask, because sometimes we assume that we can ask because they're going to say no. But yeah, the worst scenarios they're going to say no. But what happens if they say yes? Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for that, Patricia. So it's 1:23, depending on your time zone. We've got 7 minutes remaining here. So I know I'm the only one. Actually, I think Eve's on my time zone. We've got about 7 minutes remaining because we're going to stick to that hour. So in these last 7 minutes, what is the one item that rises to the top for each of you that you would say would be one of the most important sort of action-oriented things that mothers and fathers could take today to help move the needle towards a more egalitarian home life? And I know I'm throwing that at you.
I am going to keep it short because it's 7 minutes, but I see parenting as a toolbox, right? You grab the tools that you need and the tools that are passed on to you, and you keep them there in case you need those. So I would say we need better tools, and we need tools that come from mom, from dad, from grandparents, from all sorts of people around your circle, in order to make a better toolbox or a better equipped person for the next generation. So pretty much we need these tools to be available. For example, me as a man, I am dying to have a conversation with women about how to be better allies, because it's not my place to dictate how I am a better ally. I would like to talk to women, to moms and professionals, and ask them, how can I be a better ally? And you guys tell me, what can I do? What are the boundaries? I don't know what the boundaries are. So right now I've been kind of like, in the background, but I would like to, for those spaces to open up. And I also would like to get more educated about, how do I pass along my or let's say, your gender inequality, how can I become a better advocate for other men, in my case for other fathers, so I can talk directly to them and become an echo of your voice. And I think those spaces need to open up so we can multiply this effect. And there's a person that might be, we always use this, like there's the red community, the yellow community, and the green community. And, all here we're in the green, but there might be someone that might be in the yellow, and they might be thinking about it, and just talking to somebody or giving them the right example can make them shift to that green zone. So, how do we take it there? And unfortunately, for us dads, we don't talk about this a lot. There's some of us out there talking, but we cannot do it. I cannot talk about gender equality without you. So it's a joint effort, and I think it's something that we need to open more spaces for it. And let's say, hey, how many men want to come to this convention or this Clubhouse space or Facebook Live and talk about this, and make yourself vulnerable and open up so we can understand, and we can help you echo this voice at your workplace, with your family, with your friends.
And we can't solve gender equality without you also.
I think I will pick on that. And I think one of the keys is treat parenting as being as a team. So if you're a team and if you work together in a team, yes, in certain circumstances, you will have things that you do, like not roles, but like things that you do, let's say like the laundry, or you are the one picking up the kids, or you're the one doing this. But actually, if that person can do it, the other one should be able to do it. So that is what I meant by a team. So it's not just you, mom, you need to do this, and I am the dad, so therefore I do this. It's being able to interchange those roles, or the things that we do within what is called parenting, and be able to work equal at that level. And that, I think, makes a lot of equality, because you can see the difference and the efforts and the challenges in the different roles, because you are able to interchange those roles because you are a team and you work together. And, in technology works like that. Like in my team, I expecting that if someone is sick, or if someone is not available, or is on holiday, all the member of the team is able to pick up what he's doing or she's doing, and is able to continue the work, and it's the same thing. And I think the parenting role is super important to treat it as a team. And therefore, when the person that is at home feel proud of what they're doing, as well as the person is out working is proud as well of what they're doing. So we go together as a unit, and it's a conversation that I was saying at the beginning, when people having those awkward silence moments when people was like, oh, he's at home. He's like, yes, and he's the one that has the hardest work, and I'm very proud of that. And feeling proud of that, and put it, in front of people, as Sergio was mentioning at the very beginning.
Love that. Is there any?
I love that too. I'll chime in. So I've now had over close to 2,100 parents who have participated in the research I've been doing on the pandemic since March of 2020. And I think what strikes me is that, and we've had this kind of growing mental health care crisis that is just breaking people in really profound ways. I think marriages are breaking. When I look at people's responses around their happiness, satisfaction with themselves as a partner, or with their partners as a partner, it's about 30% of the couples who are happy in their partnerships, who feel like they are doing as well or better than they were before the pandemic. So 70% are not, right? And, men, women, families, employers, right? Like if people's relationships do not survive, right? That is bad for everybody. That's bad for men. That's bad for women. That's bad for children. So I see that, right? Like relationships are breaking. People's own health is breaking down. People feel like they are doing terribly. at self-care. Like 80% of parents are doing terribly at self-care. People have given up going to their regular appointments. People are not getting routine screenings, whether it's for chronic conditions or for preventative screenings. So I think that everyone needs time to make space for this care of themselves. And that has a positive ripple effect to their partnership, that has a positive ripple effect to their children, that has a positive ripple effect to their mental health. Because people want to be excellent at everything. And the unsustainability of trying to be an excellent parent, partner, worker, and self-caregiver in a crisis when you're trying to manage all of the unpaid work and possibly paid work as well, and in isolation, it just isn't sustainable. So I would love to see people embrace in their families, in their homes, a conversation where everyone has some personal time. And I believe that will be healing in many ways in families.
Thank you so much, Leslie. So any final words before you wrap up? Eve, do you have any final thoughts?
I'll say three things. Fair play, which is parenting out loud, involving men in house care and housework and childcare. I like to talk about fair day, which is my move towards a 4-day work week. I think that's the future of work. And then fair pay, which is we need to start paying women equitably, because that starts the cycle of starting to say, well, my partner makes more money than me, and so then I should be doing more housework. And then we just get into a cycle where we can't break. So I look at it as fair play, fair day, and fair pay.
Love that. Thank you all. We're at the final minutes here, but thank you all so much, really, truly, for all the work you each are doing. It's amazing. And your voices, I do see out in the world over and over. And so I'm very grateful for your voices. So keep that rolling, because the more people that see this recording out in the ether after this, if they didn't join today, they're going to be able to see it. And this conversation can just keep happening. It is a snowball. And the more we talk about it, the more we have a dialogue about it, the more we can get things to change. So really appreciate all those fathers out there too, who are acknowledging and picking up the hard work too. Absolutely. And for all the mothers that are having those difficult conversations, because they can be. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Leslie, Patricia, Sergio, Eve. You all are amazing, and can't wait for more talk on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.